Democracy. In a democracy, power comes from the people. Citizens have the right to vote on laws, leaders, and important decisions. This can take different forms like direct democracy, where everyone votes on everything, or representative democracy, where elected officials make choices on behalf of the people. The key idea is political equality. Every person's vote has the same weight. Countries like Switzerland occasionally use direct democracy by holding national referendums, while others like India and Canada mostly use representative forms. Also, democracies usually protect individual rights like free speech, press, religion, and the right to protest. The idea is to make government accountable, so regular elections are held to keep leaders in check. In short, democracy means the people are the boss, and they have the tools to fire or hire their leadership through the ballot box. Republic. A republic is a type of democracy where citizens elect representatives to make decisions and create laws on their behalf. Instead of everyone voting on every issue, people vote for politicians who then do the day-to-day work of governing. Think of it like hiring someone to manage a business while you focus on your job. You're still the owner, but someone else handles the operations. The United States is a classic example. Citizens vote for senators, members of Congress, and a president. These elected leaders are expected to serve the public, and if they don't, voters can replace them in the next election. Most republics have a constitution that lays out the law and protects citizens' rights. Unlike monarchies where power is inherited, leadership in a republic comes from the consent of the governed. Monarchy. In a monarchy, ruling power is passed down through a family, usually for generations. The leader is often called a king or queen. Monarchies were one of the earliest forms of government, and for centuries, many countries were ruled this way. In an absolute monarchy, the ruler has nearly unlimited power. They make laws, command armies, and control resources, often without needing approval from anyone else. Historically, places like Saudi Arabia and ancient France have operated this way. Since monarchs inherit their role, the right to rule is usually passed from parent to child, often the eldest son. Monarchs justify their power through tradition, bloodline, or sometimes religion, like the divine right of kings. While monarchies can bring stable leadership, they can also lack checks and balances when power gets concentrated in one person. Constitutional monarchy. A constitutional monarchy blends tradition with modern democracy. Here, there's still a king or queen, but their powers are mostly ceremonial. Real political power lies with elected officials who run the day-to-day government, and everything operates under a constitution or set of laws. Think of the monarch as a national symbol, kind of like a living flag, while prime ministers and parliaments do the actual governing. The United Kingdom is a well-known example. King Charles III holds the throne, but Prime Minister Rishi Sunak handles the country's leadership. Japan, Sweden, and Norway also follow this model. The Constitution sets boundaries so the royal family doesn't interfere with policy or laws. It's a way of holding on to cultural history while still allowing people to choose their leaders and participate in government. Dictatorship. A dictatorship is when one person seizes and holds absolute power, often without consent from the people. This leader, called a dictator, usually comes to power through force, manipulation, or by undermining existing systems. Once in charge, they control the government, judiciary, military, and often the media. Elections, if they happen, are often rigged, and public criticism can lead to punishment. Examples include North Korea under Kim Jong-un or Iraq under Saddam Hussein. In dictatorships, power doesn't come from the people. It's taken and maintained through fear, propaganda, and repression. Laws can change overnight, and citizens usually don't have a say. The lack of checks and balances makes it easier for abuse of power, and decisions are made to keep the dictator in control, not necessarily to benefit the people. Totalitarianism. Totalitarianism takes dictatorship to the extreme. Not only does the government control political life, but it also tries to dominate every aspect of society, including religion, education, economy, and even how people think. Through propaganda, constant surveillance, and brutal suppression of dissent, totalitarian regimes aim to eliminate any challenge to authority. Citizens are expected to support the government unquestioningly. Nazi Germany under Hitler and the Soviet Union under Stalin are two famous historical examples. In a totalitarian state, the media is state-controlled, freedom of speech doesn't exist, and neighbors may even spy on each other. The government often uses fear to maintain loyalty. Those who speak out risk prison, torture, or worse. It's not just about running the country, it's about controlling the minds and behavior of everyone within it. Oligarchy. In an oligarchy, a small group of people controls the government, economy, and major decisions of the country. This group could be wealthy businessmen, military leaders, or elite families, and they usually act to protect their own interests, not the public's. The power isn't elected by the people, it's usually held through wealth, status, or force. For example, ancient Sparta was ruled by a few powerful military leaders, while In some modern states, political power might be concentrated among ultra-wealthy families or corporate elites. Oligarchies can sometimes hide behind the appearance of democracy, where elections exist but are heavily influenced by a handful of insiders. When decision-making is restricted to a privileged few, it often leads to inequality and limits opportunities for others to have a voice in government. Theocracy. A theocracy is a government led by religious leaders or based on religious laws. In this system, church and state aren't just connected, they're often one and the same. Leaders claim their authority comes from a divine source, and laws are interpreted through sacred texts like the Bible, Quran, or Torah. Iran is a modern-day example where Islamic clerics have ultimate authority, and laws are grounded in Sharia, or Islamic law. In a theocracy, civil rights can be closely tied to religious belief, meaning what's legal or illegal depends on the dominant faith's teachings. There's usually little room for religious diversity or freedom of expression. In theocratic systems, questioning the government can be seen as questioning the faith, which can lead to severe penalties. Anarchy. Anarchy means no government at all. There are no rules, no leader, and no formal authority telling people what to do. It's a state of total freedom, but also total uncertainty. Imagine if your town had no police, no schools, and no traffic laws. Everyone would have to decide for themselves how to act. Some people see anarchy as chaos, like in collapsed governments after civil wars. Others think of it as a philosophical idea where people cooperate without being forced by a state. For example, after the fall of the Somali government in the early 1990s, different groups took control and lawlessness spread. While anarchy promises ultimate freedom without rules or structure, it can quickly lead to conflict, violence, and power struggles, especially in large communities. Communism. Communism is an economic and political system where the government owns all property and resources. The idea is to eliminate social classes so that everyone shares equally in the wealth of the country. In theory, there's no private property. Everything from factories to farms is owned by the community as a whole, managed by the state. Leaders aim to promote equality by redistributing wealth and providing basic needs for all citizens. The Soviet Union and Maoist China are historical examples, and modern-day Cuba and North Korea still follow communist principles. However, in practice, communist states often end up with a powerful central government that controls nearly every aspect of life. Critics argue that without private ownership or competition, the system can become inefficient and suppress individual freedoms, even though the goal is to create fairness for everyone. Socialism. Socialism is a system where the government plays a bigger role in the economy to ensure that everyone has access to basic services like healthcare, education, and housing. Unlike communism, people can still own property and run businesses, but the government manages key industries and uses taxes to fund social programs. The main goal is to reduce inequality and make sure no one is left behind. Countries like Norway, Sweden, and Denmark follow this model. They have free public schools, universal healthcare, and strong safety nets, while still supporting private enterprise. Socialism doesn't mean total government control. It's more about balancing the free market with public services to create a fairer society. In this system, the government helps redistribute wealth from the rich to the poor through progressive taxation and government spending. Federalism. Federalism splits political power between a national government and smaller local governments like states or provinces. Each level has its own responsibilities and can make its own laws. For example, in the United States, the federal government handles things like the military and international trade, while states manage education and local policing. This division of power helps different regions govern in ways that suit their own needs, while still being part of a unified country. Other federal systems include Canada, Germany, and Australia. Federalism allows for local control and experimentation. What works in one state may not in another. At the same time, the national government ensures basic rights and handles big-picture issues. It's like managing one big team with individual teammates who also have their own plays. Parliamentary system. In a parliamentary system, voters elect members of parliament, and those lawmakers then choose the top leader, usually called the prime minister. So instead of voting for a president directly, citizens vote for a political party, and the party with the most seats picks the head of government. This often leads to smoother collaboration between lawmakers and leaders because they come from the same political group. The United Kingdom, Canada, and India all use this system. If the ruling party loses support, Parliament can hold a vote of no confidence and replace the Prime Minister without needing a whole new election. Parliamentary systems can be more flexible and responsive, but critics say power shifts can happen too quickly, and voters have less direct control over who leads the country. Presidential system. In a presidential system, the president is elected directly by the people and serves as both the head of state and the head of government. The president runs the executive branch separately from the legislature, which is made up of elected lawmakers. This setup creates a clear separation of powers. so no one branch gets too much control. The United States is the most well-known example. It means citizens vote for a president and, separately, for senators and representatives. Each branch can check and balance the other. Congress makes laws, the president can veto them, and the courts can rule them unconstitutional. This system aims to prevent abuse of power, but it can lead to gridlock if different branches don't cooperate. It emphasizes direct accountability because the president answers to the voters, not to a parliament. Authoritarianism. Authoritarianism is a system where one leader or a small group holds significant power and limits political freedom. Elections, if they exist, are tightly controlled, and criticism of the government is often punished. Unlike totalitarianism, it doesn't try to control every part of life, but it does keep strict control over politics, media, and public expression. Leaders might claim they're maintaining order or protecting the country, but in the process, they restrict free speech, limit opposition, and rule by decree more than by democratic law. Countries like Russia and Belarus are often described as authoritarian. In such governments, you might see strong police presence, censorship, and a lack of real political competition. The goal isn't complete mind control, just firm control over who's in charge and how long they stay there. Now that you've seen the many types of government, which system do you think works best and why? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss another deep dive like this.